Hi there. Have you got time for a story? Because today the book I've got is called Time for a Tale. It's about a fox and a goose. You know how in stories, foxes are usually clever and tricky and wily. And geese, well, sometimes they're a bit silly. Listen to the story and see what you think about this fox and this goose. The book is Time for a Tale, written by Dugald and illustrated by Elisabeth Noseng. Time for a Tale. Once upon a time, there was a hungry fox who wanted to catch a goose. The fox took a large bag and strolled down to the nearest farm. When he got there, he hid behind a hedge and waited for a plump, juicy goose to come along the road. Whump went the bag over the goose. Hiss, hiss went the angry goose. Aha, went the fox, thinking how clever he'd been. I am pleased to see you, goose, said the fox. You shall make me a fine dinner. In fact, I think I shall eat you up right away. Why, certainly, exclaimed the goose. But wouldn't it be a shame to eat a plump, juicy goose like me out here by the cold roadside? I dare say your nice warm den is not far, and I know a story or two that might pass the time on the way. Tuck me under your arm and I'll begin. And so the goose began to tell the story of the Pied Fox of Hamelin. Once upon a time, the town of Hamelin was invaded by ducks. There were ducks on the tables and ducks in the stables, ducks in the hall and ducks by the wall, ducks in the sheds and ducks under the beds, flapping and quacking and making a dreadfully ducky din. Nobody had a clue what to do. When the mayor's wife went to fetch some bread, she found that a duck had already eaten half the loaf. When the mayor raised a bucket of water from the well, he could hear an ominous quacking sound before the bucket was halfway up. But one day a pied fox came strolling into town. As soon as he noticed the town's duck problem, he went to the town hall to speak with the mayor. I can rid Hamelin of these ducks, he said, for 20 pieces of gold. 20 pieces of gold seemed like a lot, but then there were a lot of ducks. Done, said the mayor. The Pied Fox took out a kazoo and began making such duck-like noises on it that all the ducks became entranced. Soon there was a great train of ducks following the fox down the high street, along the lane and down to the village pond, where the ducks all suddenly remembered they belonged. Back at the town hall, the mayor laughed at the Pied Fox. Anyone could have got rid of the ducks by making quacking noises, he said. I didn't think that's what you meant to do, and I'm certainly not paying for it. That made the Pied Fox very angry, and he took up his kazoo and left. The next day, the townspeople saw the Pied Fox clucking his way down the high street, with every single chicken in town hurrying along behind him. and as soon as they reached the bottom of the road, they turned the corner and were gone. "Well," said the mayor's wife, "there goes breakfast." And, search as they might, no one ever found out what became of those chickens, except for the clever-pied fox, of course. But by then he was too full to speak. The end. "Ha ha, goose," laughed the fox. "I think I know what happened to those chickens. But now we're at my den, and I am going to eat you up." "Oh, yes," said the goose. "Please waste no time about it. Is the water nice and hot? I do think boiling is the best way to cook a goose, don't you?" "Why," said the fox, "I hadn't thought of that. And I suppose," he added, "that while we're waiting for the water to boil, there might be—" "Time for a tale," said the goose, "about a clever Arabian fox named Ali Baba." Ali Baba and the 40 Sheep. One day a young fox named Ali was out walking when who should he see but a flock of the biggest, baddest, meanest-looking sheep you ever saw. Now, Ali wasn't afraid of any sheep, even big, bad ones, but he hid anyway, just to be on the safe side. As he watched them, the biggest, baddest, meanest-looking sheep cried, "Open, sesame!" A magic door to a cave opened in a rock nearby, and the sheep disappeared inside. After a while the sheep left the cave, and Ali approached the rock. "Open, sesame!" he cried, and the door opened for him too. Soon Ali was inside the sheep's secret lair. His ill-gotten gains lay all around him. There were famous paintings and sculptures that the sheep had stolen, and piles of gold and jewels. Wasting no time, Ali took as much gold as he could carry and returned to his house in the city. But he didn't notice that the biggest, baddest, meanest-looking sheep of them all had been following close behind him. Back with his flock, the head sheep plotted his revenge. First he brought 40 empty oil jars. Then he hid a sheep in each one and had the jars delivered to Ali's house. "Tell Ali the jars are a gift from a secret admirer," he said to the delivery boy. "As soon as we're inside his house, we will steal back all our gold." It wasn't long before the jars were outside Ali's house, and Ali was just about to say, "A secret admirer? How lovely! Please bring the jars inside at once," when one of the sheep let out a loud "baa." "Ha-ha!" cried Ali. "Just bring those jars in one by one." Clever Ali guessed straight away what the sheep were up to. As each jar was brought in, Ali pulled out the surprised sheep inside, sheared it, and pushed it out of the back door. "Baa, baa," complained the sheep. "Baa, baa to you, indeed," Ali laughed. "Now I have got not only your gold, but your wool as well." After that, the wicked sheep were never seen again, and Ellie lived happily ever after. But from time to time he would say, "Bah, bah," and laugh to himself, and that, of course, is how he got his name. The end. By the time the story was over, the water was boiling nicely. "That was a fine tale," said the fox, "but I'm hungry. Please hop in my pot at once." "Oh, excuse me," said the goose. "You didn't mean to eat me without any herbs, I hope, especially as so many grow near your house. And while you pick them, there will be—" "Just time for a tale?" The Fox Princess and the Pea. Once upon a time there was a fox prince who wanted to marry a beautiful fox princess, but she had to be a real fox princess. So he issued a proclamation inviting fox princesses from far and wide to come to his palace. It wasn't long before there was a line of fox princesses outside the palace. But when the prince looked at them, he was sure he could spot a few impostors. The prince needed a way to find out which of them were real fox princesses. He decided to use a test. First, he put a small pea on a bed. Then he took 5 mattresses and piled them on top of the pea. Ordinary princesses couldn't possibly sleep in a bed with a pea in it. But a real fox princess wouldn't give 2 wags of her bushy tail if there were 50 peas in the bed. The first princess to try the bed gave a happy oink, snuffled up the pea and ate it before going to sleep. She wasn't a real fox princess. Another princess didn't sleep in the bed at all, but perched in a corner of a room, squawking all night. She wasn't a real fox princess either. Soon all the princesses had tried the bed. It seemed there wasn't a single one that was a real fox. But one night another princess came to the palace door. The prince didn't think she looked much like a fox, but as usual he showed her to the bed with the pea in it. He had nearly given up hope of ever finding a bride, and so he was amazed when the princess slept in the bed all night without stirring or squealing or squawking once. The fox prince didn't waste any time after that. The couple were married without delay, and they lived happily ever after. Although, as far as I can remember, the fox prince forgot to take the pea out from under his bed. And for all I know, it is still there to this very day. The end. When the fox had picked enough herbs, the moon was high in the sky and all the water in the pot had boiled away. This made the fox so angry that he threw the herbs away, crying, "Herbs and boiled goose may have been very well at dinner time. Now it is nearly breakfast time." "Oh, then you must have me for breakfast," exclaimed the goose. "The sun will be up at any moment, and while we wait, there's just time for one more tale." The 3 little chicks. Once upon a time, there was a good little fox who overheard a mother hen sending her 3 little chicks off into the big wide world to seek their fortunes. "Remember," she clucked, "foxes are mad, bad and dangerous to know." Well, being called mad, bad and dangerous to know would make anyone upset. And the good little fox was no exception. So he went straight to the first little chick's house to explain. Little chick, let me in," he called merrily. But the rude chick replied, "Not by the hair of your chinny chin chin," and she wouldn't let him in. Well, the good little fox was good, but rudeness like that made his tail go all bushy. So, with a huff and a puff, he blew the first little chick's house down. Perhaps the second little chick would listen to him in her house of wood. Little chick, let me in," called the good little fox. But the rude chick replied, "Not by the hair of your chinny chin chin," and she wouldn't let him in. Well, the good little fox was good, but rudeness like that set his teeth on edge. So, with a huff and a puff, he blew the second chick's house down too. There was one little chick left. She had a house of brick. Little chick, let me in," begged the good little fox. But the rude chick replied, "Not by the hair of your chinny chin chin," and she wouldn't let him in either. Well, the good little fox was good, but rudeness like that suddenly made him quite hungry. So, with a huff and a puff, he found out that you just can't blow down a brick house. Still, he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed until he had run out of both huff and puff. But the rude little chick, safe in her house of brick, just laughed. "That does it," cried the angry fox. "I'm coming down the chimney and then I'm going to eat you all up." But the fox hadn't seen that the chick had lit a fire in the grate, and when he tried to come down the chimney, he found out that the fire was very hot. "Ouch!" he cried. The fox ran and howled and howled and ran so hard that he's probably still running and howling to this day. And as for the three little chicks, they all lived happily ever after. The end. "And I lived happily ever after too," said the goose, for the fox had finally fallen fast asleep. So the goose left the den and skipped safely all the way back to the farm. So, what do you think of that fox and that goose? Pretty tricky. And did you notice some of those stories that had foxes in them? Sound a bit like some other fairy stories that we've heard. You can have a lot of fun if, like these authors, you try making a fairy story with a difference. Maybe Goldilocks and the three bears with a boy instead, or Jack and the beanstalk but with Jacqueline as the hero. Try it. Have fun. See you next time.